First Nordic came out of originally a EMX royalty, who acquired all the projects in 2016-17, and the chairman at the time approached me and presented the opportunity to work in Sweden. And after a little bit of due diligence, looking at the property package, it was a no-brainer. And I was the CEO that took Goldline Resources public in 2020. So after a few years of being private, we stepped in, we raised $6 million, took the company public, and acquired some of the assets from Agnico at that time.
Communication with investors is huge, and also having the right backers is very important. I think what really has worked for me has been having a very clear kind of business plan and then executing on it and continuously executing on it. And people see, okay, the plan that they've laid out, they always seem to do what they've laid out, and that ends up getting you a lot of confidence from investors. And I found that works really well. And then obviously, listen, past successes help, exactly as you noted, because a lot of the times I think the key three things are, asset, the management team, kind of the two main things, and then what's the general market look like, right, for that commodity. But when you go for the management team, the asset part's kind of taken care of. They've already worked their criteria, their filters, and moved that through. So that's a nice, for a simplistic way for investors to look at it. If you pick a management team that's done it before, you got some pretty good confidence that it's going to happen again. But definitely communication with investors, have the right backers, and then definitely having a business plan and executing on it, and it's being very clear that you're executing on it. As long as you have an asset that's decent and a good management team surrounding it, sometimes it can get more support than an asset that's of better quality, based on the backers and the management team pushing it forward.
Sweden historically is a well-known mining jurisdiction, but really only opened up to foreign exploration, kind of the mid-90s. So both Sweden and Finland, said, hey, we've got to get foreign capital in here. We've got to get foreign technology in here. And they, as the EU was created, it was the time to open up the borders. And so you've got one of the most fertile, greenstone belts in the world, the Central Lapland Greenstone Belt, with both Sweden and Finland. That has still only yielded maybe 10 million ounces of gold compared to other greenstone belts that have got 100, 150 million ounces of gold. So we're really in the early days of Scandinavian exploration. You've got, really, if you look at the last 30 years of how it has opened up, you've only had maybe 15 years of decent markets to be able to fund that exploration. So you really are dealing with like a Canadian, greenstone belt, the Abitibi, but maybe 80, 90 years, without multiple cycles and entrepreneurs and mining companies successfully discovering metal there. So you've also got, glacial till. So you've got maybe a 15-meter cover that blocks any visual occurrences of bedrock and chip sampling. So it's a little bit more challenging to make those discoveries. So yeah, completely underexplored, incredibly exciting. And in our perspective, to have a 100-kilometer belt controlled by one company is incredibly unique. You wouldn't see that very often in Canada.
2014-15 kind of time frame is when Agnico came knocking at the door. Barsele had made there was a discovery and then they built upon it, and Agnico came knocking 2014-15. They were already very hot to trot in that area. As you know, they have a major operation in Finland that's a great cash flow operation for them, and so they like Scandinavia. They always have, and so they came knocking, and then they entered into this JV where it's fully carried. They're 55, and Barsele at that time was 45. Now First Nordic. It's a solid partnership. Agnico continues to work on it and on their expense, and continues to de-risk and advance it, and we've got significant exposure to it. Back in the days, 1 million ounces got you a mine very easily. Probably still in certain jurisdictions, and depending what the infrastructure around it is, 1 million gets you there. 1.5 million for sure gets you there. So at 2.4, you're there. This is already a mine. I think there's significant potential upside exploration, especially at depth, along strike as well. High level, could this go to 4? Yeah. Could it go to 5? Yeah. That's the numbers that people have come to when spending significant amount of time doing work on this asset. So I think the 2.4 is already there. I think it's at that size. Now, I can't speak for Agnico. Agnico is a $45-50 billion company. their hurdle rates and criteria are different as a major. They're one of the biggest majors out there. So maybe their number's 500,000 ounces a year, right? Whereas now maybe it produces 200,000 ounces a year. So, for a mid-tier or an emerging major, I think Barsele already with what it has right now is a flagship asset, a moneymaker. And for a major, the size of Agnico, I can't speak for it, what that number is, but when you start thinking about Rupert Resources being at 4 million ounces, and obviously Agnico being a 14.9% shareholder there, maybe seeing some potential upside there, maybe 4 makes sense for even a very large major to start thinking about. And at 2.4, I think there's significant room to grow at Barsele, even for a major. So the key objectives for this year, and it's an initial program that's been set up, is obviously to try to grow or test the resource right in the main resource area. So probably half the program is to put a few holes in to test, does the resource expand kind of near the resource area. There's some very obvious areas we know it will expand. I think what Agnico is really trying to do at this point is almost like wildcat drilling or scout drilling. Just put a hole in, and if it kind of connects to the main resource, or there's some obvious signs that it connects, that could be a real big arm waving moment. And then the second part of the program is really straight up wildcat drilling. It's regional to the main resource area, not even close to it. Some targets that look very good in terms of geology, geophysics, and geochemistry. Like all the layers of work have been done, and just put some holes in them and see what happens. To learn more about the geology, but also a lot of discoveries have been made that way, as long as a lot of the other items line up. And I think what they're looking for is an elephant. I think this is in such a geologically potent area. You've got a major base metals belt intersecting with a major gold belt, precious metals belt. And on that base metals belt, there's probably 20, 30 active mines, or historic and active mines, probably 150 discoveries. And so I think they think there's something out there. And they're doing some pretty kind of reconnaissance or wildcat drilling to see if there's anything else out there outside of the main resource area. And I would say that we already know there's a resource there. We strongly believe there's already a mine there. I think they're trying to see if there's something else out there that could be a big kind of blue sky item.
Great question. Before Taj joined, the Pawbacken project was a big focus for us. We made a new discovery on the southern part of the belt. That discovery was on our third drill hole. So again, we did a bunch of bot drilling, and we identified sort of this 5-kilometer structure that existed. We only tested it for about 600 meters. We've got some upcoming, data that we're going to share with the market that extends that structure. And that is a structure that's almost in size 80% larger than Barsele in length. To have made a discovery on your third drill hole and still only have drilled maybe 1,100 meters, we've just scratched the surface. When I was working with Tosh to bring him in, they really looked at Pawbacken and said, yeah, that needs 10,000 meters of drilling. And, what's most exciting about that is that deposit sits as essentially what seems to be, potentially a northern extension of the Svartaliden mine with Dragon Mining. So Dragon Mining has a mill, which is essentially a 4-kilometer dirt road access to our discovery hole. So if we can go find another Barsele at the southern end of the belt, that changes the perspective of what we're doing in Sweden drastically. And equally as exciting as our Finland project, Ojärvi. We've got 300,000 ounces. That's a 2.5 kilometer structure that probably extends closer to 4.5, 5 kilometers. Again, 100% owned greenstone belt, 300,000 ounces at, about 5 grams per ton. So high grade. And, that's been tested to 200 meters. And when you have a structure that's almost 2 kilometers long, you should have a down dip that goes for at least half of that. So, a potential, 1 kilometer structure that we haven't even tested beyond 200 meters. You don't know if that thing balloons, if that thing pinches. So I think what's most exciting probably is that these two projects allow us to drill 12 months of the year. And I'd like to really get my hands on Pawbacken, but the technical team is the one that's going to drive the bus on what we do next.